We are at Masechet Eruvin, Daf Sadi Hey, and we plan to finish the ninth perek and begin the very last perek of Masechet Eruvin. So the last perek I'll introduce when we get there. The continuation of this perek, we're talking about cases where there are walls but no, a roof but no walls, and the principle of, do we take the top edge and imagine it coming down, like in a portico, and we'll apply it to a sukkah as well. And then other cases of like where there's a bridge or overpass over a road, can you carry on that road that's under the overpass? So these could have a lot of practical implications. All right, so let's dig right in. We mentioned this case of achsadra, a portico or gazebo, babika, in the middle of, there's nothing around it, just in the valley. And the Rav says you're allowed to carry inside the entire portico because he says, since it has a roof, we consider the roof coming down on all four sides, and that's fine. And Shmuel says, no, you cannot carry inside that portico because he would apply that principle of pitikra yored as only pitikra yored v'sotem, only for three sides, but not all sides. You need at least there to be one wall. And that's how the Gemara explains it. Rav says it's allowed because we do apply piti krayored v'sotem. Shmuel says we do not apply that all around. Okay. Now, regarding this machloket between Rav and Shmuel, that's what we're going to discuss now. Where does it apply? In other words, how big is the opening of this portico, right? Does it matter how wide the portico is, that space from beam to beam? So there's two interpretations. Be'ai said, kule amala plige, ki plige beyater me'aser. One possibility is that if it's less than 10, then everyone agrees that it would be fine. Even Shemuel says if the opening is less than 10, then you can, the eye sees it all together, and then you can bring down pitikra all four sides. And they only disagree when it's more than 10. So in this case, and that, according to this interpretation, would be lenient in most cases. This interpretation says if it's more than 10, no one disagrees that it's no good. Even Rav will not apply the principle pitikra if the opening is greater than 10. The only machloket is if it's less than 10. Then Rav will say it goes down, and there Shmuel would say no, it doesn't go down at all. So according to that, Shmuel would never apply it. Certainly not more than 10, but not even less than 10. According to this interpretation, most cases it would not work. You'd not be able to apply it all around. Okay, so those are two interpretations. And now we're going to test them out. Just a question on two other statements. Hada marav Yehuda kora arba'a matir bechurba. Rav Nachman amar Rabba bar Abu korab arba'a matir b'mayim. Maneh. We have these two statements by Rav Yehuda and Rav Nachman. One is talking about a beam, and you want to carry under the beam, as in this picture. So we have a beam, it's in the middle of a ruin, but the ruin has doesn't have walls or roof, but we do have this beam that's 4 tefachim, and it's not not clear how long it is, and you want to carry under the beam. So it's the same case, because here, do we say pitikra, can we bring down the edge of the beam on all four sides of the beam, right? And since it is 4 tefachim wide, so then that would have its own space. And so Rav Yehuda says, yes, you can do that. You can carry under the beam. So he seems to apply pitikra on all four sides. And Rav Nachman does the same thing over water, that then you can draw up water if you have such a thing over the water. So whose opinion would this be? Well, let's see. Well, according to the first option, that was more lenient all around, that said that everyone agrees when it's less than 10 that you can pull down the walls on all four sides. So let's say that this beam here is 10 or less, and then Rav and Shemuel would agree with Rav Yehuda, or rather Rav Yehuda can agree with both Rav and Shemuel. So how about the other one? According to the version, to the view that they argue when it's more than the matbesef, that they argue when it's less than 10, that means nobody thinks that when it's more than 10 you can bring it down, so forget that case. And when it's less than 10, only then you can bring it down. So again, this case of that Rav Yehuda brought up would have to be less than 10, and it could only be according to Rav, because only Rav thinks that you can bring all four sides down. Shmuel never thinks you could bring all four sides down. And so now we explained who that is. So that would match up these opinions. Okay, now another matchup that we're going to try to make. Lema Abaye v'Rabba bepluta de Rav Shmuel kami palge. Perhaps Rav and Shmuel, their first generation Amoraim, and then Abaye and Rava are fourth generation Amoraim. It would seem that Abaye and Rava match up with Rav and Shmuel in the following case. Deitmad sikech al gabe achsadra sheyesh la patzimin keshera en la patzimin Abaye amar keshera v'Rabba amar pesula. Okay, so I take schach and I put it on top of a portico, that pre-existing portico. Now, if it has these patzimin, these doorposts, we saw what this looks like before, right? Something like this. Imagine that there's no houses on the sides, right? It's just open or something. If I had something like this on all around, so then everyone would agree that that's fine. I put schach on top, and then I have these partial walls. I can consider them as if they're filled in and pull down the ceiling, right? And that would be fine. Everybody would agree to that. The question is, what if there's no patzimin? And so that a case would look something like this here, where I don't know if you can see, you have four poles, and I'm putting the schach just on top of the poles, but there's no width to the poles. And so in this drawing, it happens to be connected to a covered portico area. And so for that covered portico area, I guess, yeah, we would say that you can pull them down depending on how many sides you have. But so that's the question. And so in that case, that's the machloket. Abaye says it's okay. Rava says, no, not okay. The sukkah is not a good sukkah. Let's see, why? Why would they say that? Abaye would say it's okay because we apply the ceiling that has an edge, and so we can bring it down. It doesn't matter that you have only a pole and not an edge. But perhaps Rava here would say, no, you cannot, because he does not apply the principle that the ceiling can come down. So now, since it's based on that principle, well, that's the same thing as Rav and Shmuel. Dema Abaye kerav, v'Rava k'Shmuel. Abaye and agrees with Rav that we do apply bringing the ceiling down. Rav happens to say that you can do it on all four sides. A sukkah only needs three sides in any case, right? So for sure that would be okay. And then Rava can fit with Shmuel, because Shmuel does not apply bringing down the ceiling unless you have one wall. And here you don't even have one wall. And so Rava would agree with that. Okay, so this could make sense, but we don't want to leave it like that, because we don't want to say that Rava only follows Shmuel and Abaye could only follow Rav. If possible, we'd like to reconcile both later Amoraim with at least one of the earlier Amoraim, which we can do here. Okay, if you're going to try to reconcile with both with Shmuel, you won't be able to, because Shmuel does not apply pitikra unless you have one wall. You don't have one wall, so therefore there's no way that Abaye could agree with Shmuel. But the other way around can work. Kipligi aliba de Rav. They both could agree with Rav. Abaye kerav. Abaye, that's simple. Rav does apply pitikra on all sides, and Abaye would do the same. But Rava also could. Rava adkan la kama Rav hatam ela dehane mechisot lachsadra abidi. Aval hacha dehane mechisot lav lesuka abidi la. He would say, yeah, I would agree with Rav that in the case of a portico where the beams were actually made for the portico, right? So let's say the inside of this, the gray part. So these beams and the were made to hold up this roof. And therefore, the roof we consider as if it comes down, and then you could carry in such an area. But in the case like this, you see that the beams were not created for the sukkah, for the schach, right? We just decided to do that afterwards. And so even though in general you don't need to make walls for a sukkah, special for a sukkah, like if you make a sukkah in your house and you want to use one of your house walls, right? You didn't build your house in mind that this is going to be the wall of a sukkah. Maybe you did, but right, usually you don't need to. A sukkah can be made of pre-existing walls, but in this case, it's an imaginary wall. So an imaginary wall can be used, according to this, for for the posts and the roof that it was built for, but not for something that you added on and didn't have in mind. You cannot use those posts to build an imaginary wall that would be good for a sukkah. So Rava could argue that, and in that case, Rava could agree with Rav in the case of a portico, but still maintain his opinion regarding a sukkah. All right, so that concludes that discussion, and now we get to the last part of the Mishnah regarding Rabbi Yoseh, Omer im mutarin. I'm just going to show you the Mishnah so that we can remind ourselves what we said here. There were two opinions, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yoseh. Rabbi Yehuda is the one that said that if something fell down on Shabbat, like a mavoy, and you had a mavoy and the beams fell down on Shabbat, it says you can use it on that Shabbat. Just make sure to fix it for next Shabbat, right? Once Shabbat begins, and you're allowed to carry, so that stays that entire Shabbat, but not the next one. So the Rabbi Yehuda is lenient. The Rabbi Yosef says, if you're allowed this Shabbat, then you should be allowed next Shabbat. If you're not allowed next Shabbat, then you're not allowed this Shabbat either. Okay, it's a pretty strange formulation. So, like, what do you mean by that? Do you mean that so it is okay to carry next Shabbat? Or are you saying it's not okay to carry even this Shabbat, right? What is he saying? It's equivalent. This Shabbat is the same as that Shabbat, but which way is it equivalent? So that is the opening question of the Talmud. Does he mean to say that both Shabbatot are not permitted, not next week and not this week either, or latir, or to say permitted, that just like this week is allowed because Rabbi Yehuda says it allowed, so too next week and maybe the week after, which would lead to a very strange conclusion that if you had a mavoy or something and it fell on Shabbat, then you never have to fix it. It'll be good for Shabbat forever. So which one did he mean? It seems obvious, and this might make sense, that it would have to be that you cannot carry the Shabbat. So even though at the beginning of Shabbat everything was set up fine and you were allowed to carry here, now that it fell down, you have to stop. Tanyana mehache amar Rabbi Yosef keshem shasurin latidabo kach asurin laoto Shabbat. Rabbi Yochanan, early Amora, says the same thing, and a Baraita says it explicitly, quoting just like you cannot carry in the future, so too you cannot carry even that Shabbat. All right, so that's conclusive. Now, how about halacha l'maaseh? Itamar Rav Chia bar Yosef amar halacha k'Rabbi Yosef. In fact, we have to be stringent, and if it falls on Shabbat, cannot use it. Shmuel amar halacha k'Rabbi Yehuda. Shmuel, however, it rules leniently that we can follow Rabbi Yehuda and we can continue carrying even though something fell down on Shabbat. Okay, Umi amar Shmuel. This could be relevant today. If you have an eruv and it was okay on Friday afternoon, and when it got dark, and maybe there's a storm or something on Shabbat itself, and something falls down, right? Then what would you do? So wait, hold on. Did Shmuel really say that? Shmuel said, right, that he's lenient? Hold on, we have another statement. B'hatanan. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, b'meh devim amorim, be'eruvei techumin, aval be'eruvei chatzerot, ma'arvin ben ladat, ben shelo ladat, lefi shezachin ladam shelo b'fanav, and chavin shelo b'fanav. Okay, on an unrelated subject, this is a long question. We had a Mishnah way before that says, can I make an eruv on your behalf without your knowledge? Right? And we said, yeah, you can. But when is that true? You cannot. But when is it true that you cannot? That's eruv techumin. Because if I make an eruv techumin for you, then I put it outside, to the east 1,000 amot. That means you can't go to the west 1,000 amot. So then that's going to cause you a problem. But eruv chatzerot, which where I'm making you permitted to carry, I'm not forcing you to carry, but now you can carry. That's a net benefit. Total benefit. So therefore, you can benefit someone without their knowledge. So that was Rabbi Yehuda's opinion there. And Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Shmuel halacha k'Rabbi Yehuda. So in that case, he said halachas like Rabbi Yehuda. But Shemuel went on in that case and said, "Velo od ela kol makom sheshana Rabbi Yehuda be'eruvin halacha kimoto." Shemuel said, anytime we see we have an opinion of Rabbi Yehuda regarding Eruvin, we follow his opinion. Okay, in all cases. Now, we're still part of the question. When he said that, remember this? Rav Chanan from Baghdad, he said to Rav Yehuda, hold on, did Shemuel agree that halachas like Rabbi Yehuda, even in a mavoy, an alleyway where the crossbeam fell down? In other words, our Mishnah, right? That's our Mishnah here. He says, no, I only said we follow halakha like Rabbi Yehuda regarding Eruvin, meaning, and Eruvin here means the joining together of the bread, right? That part of it. And not mechitzot, not the preliminary building, making sure that it's enclosed. That's not the Eruv itself. And so I'd never said that we always follow Rabbi Yehuda regarding mechisot, and this is a case here of our Mishnah is a case about mechisot, and so he didn't mean to say that, and so that is the contradiction. Up here we have Shemuel saying halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda regarding our Mishnah, and in this conversation he says halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda regarding our Mishnah. So that's a contradiction. How are we going to solve that? So Amadav Anan, Shmuel. Oh, I spoke with Shmuel about this. This is good, right? And so I have the answer. It depends on the context. If when it fell down, the wall of the crossbeam of the mavoy fell down, what was it opening up to? If it was opening up to a karmelit, then you can be more lenient because what's going to happen just in case if next week you continue to carry and you didn't fix it. So at worst that's happening is you're carrying simply from only to a karmelit, and so it's it's only rabbinic prohibition. Whereas when he said, so that's when he said we follow the Yehuda, and when he said we don't follow the Yehuda, that's when the mavoy is opening up to a reshut harabim, and in that case you have a possible Torah prohibition of carrying from reshut ha'echid to reshut harabim. In that case, he said stop carrying everybody right away because we want to make sure that it will get fixed during the week, and that way we were able to resolve the contradiction. Okay, that's a little tricky because talking about the same Mishnah, and yet he said opposite things because, well, he was thinking of different cases. So maybe when he said them, they were discussing different cases in context. So now his two halachot are being quoted out of context. We got to put them back into context. All right, and the last Mishnah regarding bridges. הבונה עלייה על גבי שני בתים, וכן גשרים המפולשים מטלטלים תחתיהם בשבת, דברי רבי יהודה, חכמים אוסרים. If I build a second floor above two other houses, and there's a pathway in between. There's like if you drive on the FDR, at one point it passes under an apartment building, right? So that would be kind of like that. And so the point here is that in this area has two walls and it's covered, right? So is that good enough to be able to enclose it so that I can carry underneath? The Yehuda says yes. Chachamim say no. Or the same thing regarding a bridge, right? A bridge over the water wouldn't matter, but over the road, right? A bridge over the road also has two walls, the sides, right? The poles of the bridge, and the top of the bridge on top, the where people would walk, right? So that also creates the same thing as this. So the Yehuda says that's enough. Chachamim say no. The Gemara is going to discuss why, according to the Yehuda, is this enough? Is it because there's two walls, or because two walls and also a roof, and maybe he extends the roof down? Okay, we'll talk about that. Furthermore, the Yehuda goes even further and says, if there's a mavoy that's open on both ends, right, it has only two walls, then all I need to do is put something, so a cross beam on both ends, and I can carry in the mavoy. What do you see here? That all you need is two walls, right? Even though it's not covered, you have only a symbolic cross beam. So the Yehuda seems to go even further in principle than the previous one. Okay, that's the Gemara. That's the Mishnah. Gemara. Amar Rabba. La tema hainu ta'amad Rabbi Yehuda mishum dekasabar shete mechitzot deoraita. Says, don't think that Rabbi Yehuda is permitting these cases because you have two walls, and two walls are sufficient mideoraita. That's not the case. Right? Because after all, he does require there to be something built on top. So it's only because there is a roof. And so when you have these two walls and a roof, you can apply the principle of that the roof comes down, as we saw before. All right, so that was what Rabbah said. Itibe Abaye, his student Abaye asks him a question from a Braita. Yated al ken amar Biuda. We have a Braita that the first halacha said, what we something similar to what was said before, and then Rabbi Yehuda adds, Mi sheyesh lo shne batim mishne sidei reshut harabim, ose lechi mikan velechi mikan, o kora mikan vekora mikan, venose venoten ba'emsa. Amru lo en ma'arabim reshut harabim bechach. This is a case we've seen before. There's a street in the middle, and I have one home on one side of the street, and I own another home on the other side of the street, and I want to carry across the street between my two homes. So the Yehuda says, simple. All I have to do is, let's say the home on this side, put a beam on here and a beam here, right? A pole on two edges of my house, and that's sufficient. That creates a symbolic wall, and then I can carry from one house to the other. And the other rabbi said, no, you can't enclose the Shut Harabim in that way. Okay, but for the Biuda, you see, all you need is two walls, the two fronts of my house on each side, and a little bit of a symbol. That's all you need. So Rabbah, why'd you say that we need the principle of pulling the ceiling down, the roof down? You don't apply that in this case of the two houses on the sides because there is no roof here. So it is, in fact, the Biuda says all you need is two walls. So Rabbah says, you're right. From that Baraita, I am in agreement with you that we can prove from there that according to the Yehuda, all you need is two walls. But my point was that from the Mishnah, this Mishnah, you cannot derive that. The Mishnah, we have to read the Mishnah independently. The Mishnah doesn't say that. Amar Rav Ashi matnitin nami daika. Rav Ashi says, actually, you could infer it from the Mishnah. How? Midikatani ve'od amar Rabbi Yehuda me'arvin b'mavoy ve'mefulash hachamim osrim. From the end of the Mishnah, which says that you can a mavoy that's open on two ends, you can make an eruv. So, and that has only two walls. And look at this word ve'od. Ve'od is adding something to what was said before. If the reasoning of the first case is because this one has a roof and it can come down, then it makes sense to say ve'od. And now, furthermore, I'm teaching you a new principle. Not only in the case where there's a roof, but also in the case where there's no roof. All you need is two walls. So then you see that makes sense. But if the reason for the first case is because you have two walls, then why would you even bother adding this case? It's the same thing. There's no ve'od. He's not adding anything to what was said before. All right. So ela iamat mishum dekasa b'shte mechitzot d'oraita my ve'od. We're not adding anything. Shema mina, and therefore we can actually derive from the Mishnah also that according to the Yehuda, you can use both strategies. Either that you use the roof or the two sides, and that's important actually to have both of them because each of them can apply in other cases where the other one doesn't. For example, in the portico that has just four poles or four short walls, and so you don't have two walls. Right, but you do have the ceiling that can come down. So there are cases where one would apply and the other wouldn't, and vice versa. All right, and with that we conclude the 9th perek, Hadran Alach Kol Gagot Chazakim U Beruchim, on completing that perek. And now we go right into the 10th perek. This is a very interesting perek because it has nothing to do with anything that we've discussed earlier. This goes back to the laws of carrying, which we had a lot of that in Masechet Shabbat, right? What are you allowed to carry? What can't you carry? There's very little here about Eruvin. Eruvin is all of Eruvin is basically drabanan, right? Areas where you should be allowed to carry it, but the rabbi said you can't, and then you build a certain fences and you join together these areas. So we're done with that for the most part, and so really the 10th Perek stands on its own. Why is it even here and not in Masechet Shabbat? The first Tosafot of the Perek asks that question and says, well, it does mention something about Tichum. We're going to see somewhere in here, and so you do need to know a little bit about Tichum Shabbat because it's going to come up, and so there are some themes that will continue. Okay, but essentially it is different. All right, and in the case of this Perek, we actually have the benefit of a entire dissertation and then book commentary written on it. Here it is, nice big book by Aviad Stolman. So once in a while, I'll try to bring some insights from his comprehensive work on this Perek. Okay, Mishnah Hamoseh Tefillin. You're walking outside, right, in the Shut Rabim, and you come upon some tefillin. I don't know, somebody forgot them. They left them there before Shabbat. Now, you don't want to leave the tefillin out. It could be stolen. It could get ruined. It could get rained upon. So you want to keep them safe. And you want to be able to bring them inside. The problem is...
We once spoke about this, and we talked about putting it on.
Yes, exactly. This Mishnah was quoted way back. Very good. Good memory. Exactly. So this is the source of it. So machnisan zug zug. So here's a way to do it. You can put them on, right, on Shabbat. Just wear them. You're allowed to wear anything on Shabbat. And so even though we don't generally put tefillin on Shabbat, we're going to see that this is a discussion. And most opinions say that tefillin is not, Shabbat is not the time for tefillin. But nevertheless, if you put them on, so you're still wearing them and not carrying. So you put one on your head, one on your arm, and you can save two that way. Let's say there's more. Okay, then you go back, right? And you put more on, and then you keep make as many trips as you need. All right, that's the Tanakama. Rabban Gamliel Omer, Shenayim Shenayim. He says 2 by 2. Now, what does it mean by 2 by 2? And face value, it seems to mean the same thing, right? 2, one on your head and one on your arm, and then you get another 2, right? And in fact, Yaakov Nachum Epstein, important scholar on Mishnah, thinks that Rabban Gamliel and Tanakama are actually saying the same thing. They're just using different language, right? They're not actually arguing, but obviously the Talmudim are not going to take it that way because why would they argue just about language and nothing about substance? So as we're going to see, that Rabban Gamliel is understood to mean that you can take 2 on your head and 2 on your arm at the same time. Okay. You might know people who wear 2 tefillin, right? Chief Rabbi Kassin used to wear 2 on his head and 2 on his arm at the same time, right? And some Kabbalists do that. The one is different, one is Rashid, Ibn Tam, different order of the parashiyot inside. Okay, so you can do 2 by 2, and that way, if you have a lot of tefillin, you can make half the trips. Patur. When you're allowed to save them in this way, only when they have been used, all right, and but not if they are brand new tefillin. Well, why not? It would seem that when they're brand new tefillin, it's unclear whether they are meant to be tefillin or whether they're meant to be amulets. See, amulets and tefillin have some things in common. In fact, the English for tefillin is usually translated, unfortunately, as phylacteries, which means something that protects you. Right there, people thought of tefillin as, like people would wear magical spells and put them in a leather pouch and wear them for protection. And so it seems that the method of making tefillin and amulets was similar. And until you started using them as tefillin for a mitzvah, it wasn't clear if they were meant for tefillin or meant for an amulet. An amulet doesn't have a high level of kedusha like tefillin does. And so therefore, the rabbis who made this leniency, because you generally don't wear tefillin, and it's somewhat of a problem, they're lenient to save tefillin, but they're not going to give you that leniency to save for saving amulets. And so therefore, when they're new, you have to just leave them, and you cannot use this leniency to save them. Okay. Unfortunately, I think people confuse a tefillin with amulets. In truth, they are completely different, right? The tefillin are there as a mitzvah. They're a reminder of the of Shema, of the commandments, and so on. We bind them on the head. We think about them on their arms so that we perform them, and they're not meant for our physical protection. But some people do think of it that way. Okay, so that's that halacha. And then mitzan sebatim o kerichot machshich alehen umevian. If you find them are tied in bundles, they're all tied up, or a big pile and they're wrapped up, and you can't access only two, right? Because you'd have to go and undo the knots and all that. So then there's no way to carry them, to wear them and carry them. And so instead, you would guard them until night. Let's stay there all Shabbat until nighttime, and then when Shabbat's over, you can bring them into your house. So that's a nice thing to do. You want to protect the tefillin. Ubasakana. What if it's the dangerous situation? It's dangerous to be outside. You're out in the field. There's animals. There's bad people, and so it'd be dangerous to stay out there till night. And then what should you do? Mechasan veholechlo. In that case, cover them, right, so that they're protected from the elements, and maybe they'll be hidden from view. And then you go home and get them tomorrow. All right, so that's all one opinion. The Bishimon Omer, notnan lechabero v'chabero lechabero ad shemegia lechaser achisona. Oh, here's another way of doing it. You go call your friends and you make a chain link, right? A conveyor belt, and so each one passes it. You're allowed to carry in the Shut Rabim up to 4 amot. So then, just by passing it one to the other, then you can get it all the way home. Okay, it's not clear if Rabbi Shimon is saying this only in the case of sakana, where you can't leave it, or if he's saying you can do this, not just instead of wearing it, you can do this as well. And not only tefillin, v'chen beno, notno lechavero v'chavero lechavero afilu me'ah. Let's say your son is out in the field and you can't carry him home. In general, if a child can walk, you're allowed to carry them. So we're talking about a baby who can't walk, and you need to get him home. Now, how did the baby get out there in the first place? That's a good question. The Mefarshim say it was born on Shabbat. All right, the mother was out walking. She gave birth out in the field, and now we got to get the baby home. Obviously, if there's a serious medical necessity, you can violate Shabbat. But we're talking about not such a case. But you don't want to leave the baby out till night, and you want to bring it home. Okay, I could think of other easier examples. Maybe the baby was outside there before Shabbat started, and then you were out there, I don't know, doing something, and and Shabbat started, and then you realize you got to get him home. Or I don't know, someone brought him out by mistake. Okay, whatever the case is, you can use this for anything, not only tefillin, but a baby, other important matters you can use that for. The Shimon. Now the Yehuda goes a step further. Omer noten adam chavit lechavero v'chavero lechavero afilu chutz latechum. Even a barrel. You have a barrel of wine or something. It's out in the field, and you want to bring it inside. You want to drink it. So you can also use this. Everybody pass it to the other in conveyor belt. And even if it's outside the techum, in other words, even if it's more than 2,000 amot, and now you have two problems. One is you can't carry outside, and you can't transfer for so long. And he says, no problem, you make a conveyor belt, and then you can solve both problems. Amru lo. They said, no, this doesn't solve the techum problem, because as we saw, just like a person, I cannot walk 2,000 amot, so too anything I own cannot move more wherever I can't move. So if I give you my hat, you're only allowed to wear where I am allowed to walk. You can't take it outside. So that would not resolve that problem. Apparently, the Biudat does not have a problem with that. All right, that is the Mishnah. And now the Gemara is going to analyze these opinions. We're going to focus on the beginning, where Tanakama says only one pair of tefillin. Rabban Gamliel says 2 pairs of tefillin. Okay, Zuge hadin tefela. So according to Tama, you can bring 1 pair of tefillin, but not more. So this is a Stam Mishnah, that's Tanakama, and in general, Stam Mishnah is Rabbi Meir. But in this case, can we really say this is Rabbi Meir? We have a problem because it contradicts something else Rabbi Meir said. Rabbi Meir Ha'amar, in a different Stam Mishnah, back in Masechet Shabbat, it says, when you want to save something from a fire, there's a fire in your house, Okay, not a raging fire, it's just starting. So you still have time to go and save some things. The problem is that now you're going to bring it outside and you might come to put out the fire and so on. So you're allowed to save a limited amount of items. So, and he said, "Lovesh kol mashiachol lilbosh v'otev kol mashiachol la'atof." You can put on as many layers as you want, right? You go into your to your wardrobe and put on a few shirts and sweaters and whatever you can wear, you can save. Ditnan ulsham. All right. So here's the Mishnah. Well, the point is that you can save lots of things, right? So why only one pair of tefillin, right? Put on many tefillin at the same time, just like you can wear lots of shirts and save them. So that's the contradiction. So ditnan ulsham motzi kol kilet hashmisha velobesh kol mashiachol lilbosh v'otev kol mashiachol la'atof. You move all the things to your courtyard, anything that you can wear and anything that you can wrap yourself in. And that was a stam mishnah also. And how do we know that that's a bimeir? Truth is, all stam mishnayot we assume are to be meir, but in this case we have an explicit baraita that will add. It says you can go put on a few garments, go out to the courtyard, take them off, and go for another trip. You could do that all day long and save all your clothes. That's Rabbi Meir. So now we have a contradiction. The Stam Mishnah and our Mishnah says only one pair of tefillin, and that yet, regarding saving things from the fire, he says you can wear many shirts. So which one is it? What does Rabbi Meir really think? Who is the author of the Mishnah? Answer: Amarava afilu tema Rabbi Meir hatam derech malbusho kachol shavir banan. Actually, it is consistent. We always follow the way the person wears it during the week. So just like during the week, you can wear many layers. Sorry, some people like to wear lots of layers. So you can have an undershirt and a shirt and a sweater and a jacket. So that's fine. So on Shabbat, you can wear many layers if you feel it, right? And save a lot at a time. But during the week, you only ever wear one pair of tefillin. You don't go and wear multiple tefillin. So since that's the way during the week, so too on Shabbat you have to wear it the way that you usually do during the week. Okay, so it is consistent. Hatam debachol kama debae labesh enyan nasala name shel banan hachad debachol name zug echad in tefela enyan nasala name zug echad in tefela. That's what I just said. All right, and so now we've explained the Tanakama. Let's move on and explain Rabban Gamliel. He says you can bring two pairs. Why? My kasabad. Ikasabad Shabbat zeman tefillin hu zug echad in tefela. Maybe he thinks that you are supposed to wear tefillin on Shabbat, that you can wear tefillin on Shabbat. In that case, one is permitted, two is not, because you have multiple problems. First of all, you're not is a problem about tosif. About tosif means you can't add to the mitzvot. And so if this is the time of a mitzvah, so I'm going to do one mitzvah and put on one tefillin, I'm not allowed to put on two tefillin, right? I know that Mekubalim do too, but that there are different kinds of tefillin, right? But two of the same tefillin would be bal tosif, and so that would be a problem. And so that would be certainly a problem about tosif, and maybe also a problem of carrying, because you don't wear more than one. Okay, so if Shabbat is the time of tefillin, that's no good. Shabbat lav zeman tefillin hu mishum hatzala derech malbush sharu lerabanan afilu tefenameh. And if you said no, Shabbat is not the time of tefillin, and therefore I'm wearing it as an ornament. It looks nice. I like the way I look in tefillin. So I'm just wearing. If I'm wearing it simply as an ornament, then why only two pair? Why not a lot? Maybe it'll look beautiful. I'll wear 10 pair, and everybody says, "Oh, look how beautiful! It's like a whole crown, right?" And since it's not for a mitzvah, when it's for a mitzvah, I have to wear it the way the mitzvah is done, which is only one. But if I'm doing it just as an ornament and I make it look nice, then it should be even many. So why two? That's the question. So le'olam kasaba Shabbat lav zeman tefillin hu. All right, so let's go with the second one. And Shabbat is not the time of tefillin. When the rabbis say that you can save it, it's the way that you wear it during the week. So even though today is not a day where you can fulfill the mitzvah, but still you should not make it simply as jewelry. You should wear it the way you do when you fulfill the mitzvah. Well, all right, that doesn't answer the question because fine. The way during the week I only wear one. Why two? Right? You explained why not many, but still, why is two allowed? There is, in fact, space. The tefillin have to be in a certain spot, right? They have to be, but there is enough room to put two, and that would still be kosher. I could put it here or there, or back in front, and there's two spots where they could be kosher. Now, since Shabbat is not the time of tefillin, I'm not actually fulfilling the mitzvah of tefillin, but I'm putting it in the spot where I would fulfill the mitzvah of tefillin if I was wearing it there during the week. And there are two spots available for that. So I can't wear 10 of them as an ornament, right? Because it's not simply I have to wear it in a way of a mitzvah, but there are two possibilities of where I could wear it for a mitzvah, and that's why he says two. Okay, you solved the head problem. How about for the arm? Right? Are there two spots on the arm? It seems that there is, because this statement of Rav Huna said that sometimes you're carrying things in from the field, and they would carry things on their head. They used to wear tefillin all day, even when they're in the field. And now you're going to put this basket on your head. It's not nice to put it on top of the tefillin. So people, they would then take off their tefillin. This is pretty much during the week. They would take off their tefillin and put it on their arm and carry the tefillin shel rosh on their arm while they were carrying the basket on their head. So you see that there is space on the arm for two tefillin. Hold on, Rav Huna was just saying that we don't want to degrade the tefillin by putting a basket on top of it. So he says put it on your arm. It doesn't mean that when you put it on your arm, you're putting it in a spot that you could fulfill the mitzvah. Doesn't say that you should. It's fit for that. You're just going to put it somewhere else, so it's better for it. But you're not fulfilling a mitzvah, not a place of fulfilling mitzvah necessarily. Ella kedamar Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. Rather, we're going to quote again what the same here. Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchak, who said there's space on the head for two. So we're going to apply the same things. He said makom yesh berosh shera'ui להניח בו שתי תפילין, החנמה, מקום יש ביד שראוי להניח בו שתי תפילין. So we'll assume that's the same thing. Just like on the head there's room for two, so too on the arm is room for, there's two spots that you could possibly put the tefillin, and so therefore, according to the Ben Gamliel, even though on Shabbat is not the time of tefillin, still you have to wear it in a way that's not simply an ornament, but the way that you wear it for a mitzvah, and the way you wear it for mitzvah has two spots available, and that's why you're allowed to carry two pairs. Okay, and now we're going to define where the space is. This is good to know. Tana deber menashe al yadecha zo kiboret. When it says on your hand, don't put it on the palm of your hand, but rather on your bicep, which is nice symbolic. It means you're using all your strength of your arm and fulfilling the mitzvot. Ben ainecha zo kod. Between your eyes doesn't mean where you put your glasses, but rather on the crown of your head. Hecha, where is that? It's the soft spot on the infant's, on the newborn's head, right? Right up there, which is also nice. It should be, penetrate into your mind, right? You should have a soft spot, right, and allow it to enter before you solidify your ideas as you get older. Okay, so maybe that has nice symbolic value too. All right, good. Now let's continue a bit more. And lema b'derav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak kami palgeh. Now this machlok between Tana Kama and Rabban Gamliel regarding if you can bring out one pair or two pairs. Perhaps they're actually arguing around, the argument surrounds this statement. We actually kind of gave one possibility for their argument, right? But let's apply it to this. So they're arguing about this very matter. The Tanakh Masaba let le de Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, Rabban Gamliel itle de Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchak. So perhaps, as we just said, Rabban Gamliel thinks that there's room for two, and therefore you can save two pairs. And maybe Tanakh thinks that there's only room for one on the head and one on the arm. And that's why, even though Shabbat is not the time of tefillin, you have to wear it as you wear it during the week, and there's only room for one. And that would explain the machloket very well. So that's all one explanation. But now we're going to reject that. And if you're okay to stay for a few more minutes, we're going to bring, because it's going to flow. This is all part of a flow. We're going to bring four more possibilities of the reason for the machloket, and but we'll come back to the beginning. Okay, so we want to explore all of them. La de kula alma it lehu de Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. Now everyone agrees with the statement and says there's room for two. והכה בשבת זמן תפילין כמפלגה. תנא סבא שבת זמן תפילין הוא, ורבן גמליאל סבא שבת לאו זמן תפילין הוא. Oh, you could explain it this way. They all agree that there's room for two, but Tanakama says Shabbat is the time of tefillin. And since it's the time of tefillin, so you have to wear it because you're doing a mitzvah. So you have to wear one. You can't add. That'll be Baal Tosif. Rabban Gamliel says Shabbat is not the time of tefillin, and therefore you have no intention of fulfilling the mitzvah, and so therefore you're putting two on. You're not adding Baal Tosif because you're not fulfilling any mitzvah at all. Okay, or ibetema. We want to try to bring the sides together as much as possible and say they even agree. How much can they agree with? But have leave it only a small opening that they would disagree with. So maybe they all agree that Shabbat zeman tefillin hu. They all think that you can fulfill mitzvah and should on Shabbat. The question is, do you have to have intention to fulfill a mitzvah when you're fulfilling it, right? If you happen to, pass by the shul while they're blowing shofar, but you didn't have intention, did you fulfill the mitzvah? Or you have to say, I'm going to fulfill the mitzvah by listening. So that's a general argument. So here, Tanakama says you have to have kavanah to fulfill the mitzvah, and therefore, in order to carry it on Shabbat, you have to be doing it as a mitzvah. In order to do mitzvah, you have to have intention. I'm wearing this for a mitzvah. If you have intention that you're wearing it as a mitzvah, and then you put two on, now you're violating Baal Tosif, because you're wearing two. According to the Rabban Gamliel, you don't have to have intention. And in fact, when I'm putting this on, I'm not having intention to fulfill the mitzvah. I have intention to save the tefillin. So, but even though I'm not having intention to wear it, I still am fulfilling the mitzvah. So I'm allowed to. But since I don't have specific intention to fulfill the mitzvah, I can wear two because I'm not violating Baal Tosif, since I'm not specifically intending to do the mitzvah. So he has a dove, right? He can get both a cake and he can have his cake and eat it too. He's fulfilling the mitzvah even without intention, but since he's not specifically fulfilling it, he's not over Baal Tosif. Or yet a third one, fourth one, this is up to. Everyone agrees that you do not need to fulfill them. You don't have to have specific intention to fulfill the mitzvah. You fulfill it automatically. And so what they're arguing is, do I have to have specific intention in that I'm doing this to violate Baal Tosif? Tanakama says, no, I don't have to have kavanah, and therefore I'm wearing my tefillin, and I don't have any specific intention to fulfill the mitzvah, and I don't have any specific intention to violate Baal Tosif, but I still violate it, even though I don't have a specific intention. Therefore, I can't wear two. The Rabban Gamliel says I have to have specific intention in order to violate Baal Tosif. I have to say I'm wearing two tefillin because I want to violate. Now, obviously, he's not thinking that. He has intention to save the tefillin. So therefore, he has intention to save the tefillin. He doesn't have in mind to fulfill the mitzvah, but he still does fulfill the mitzvah, even without intention. That's why he's allowed to wear them. But he doesn't have intention for Baal Tosif, and therefore he's okay. He doesn't violate anything. All right. Or final answer, or the last answer is if I would think that I should wear tefillin on Shabbat, and I can still assume both of these assumptions that we said before as a Gamliel in the end, that I don't need specific kavanah to fulfill the mitzvah, and I don't need to have specific kavanah to violate Bal Tosif. But instead, here we are following the other opinion that says Shabbat is not the time for tefillin. And we're arguing whether when I do a mitzvah not in its proper time, right, does that need kavanah? So Tanakama Savar La Ba'e Kavana. So even though Shabbat is not a time of tefillin, if I do end up wearing it on tefillin, Tanakama says even without intention of violating, of adding a mitzvah, I still violate Bal Tosif. And so therefore, if I wear two on Shabbat, it would be a problem. Truth is, even if I wear one, but we'll get to that in a second. The Gamliel says, if it's not the right time to fulfill the mitzvah, then I have to have specific intention that I'm adding and doing something not at the right time and still do it in order to violate. So like if I pick up a shofar now and say, I'm doing this with intention to fulfill shofar, I have to have specific intention to fulfill it, not at the right time. Okay, so that's the final option, and we're going to reject this option. Hold on, if Shabbat is not the time of tefillin, and you say that I can violate Bal Tosif even without specific intention, then I can't even save one, because by wearing one on Shabbat, I am adding another day that's not authorized, and I'm violating Bal Tosif, so I couldn't carry anything. And it does say I can carry one, and furthermore, and furthermore, if I sleep in the sukkah on the 8th day of Sukkot, right, and there's no more mitzvah of sukkah, and I go and sleep in there on the 8th day, and let's say I live here, right, outside of Israel, where we would do that. So I don't have intention to violate Bal Tosif, and yet you would say you violate Bal Tosif even with that intention. Nobody says that. So therefore, we cannot assume this final answer. Rather, we have to go Kiddushanen Mekara, as we said originally. The Machlok, what does it mean if it says originally? Does it mean go back all the way back to the first answer? Is there room for one or two? Because truth is, we only rejected the last answer. So any of the previous four answers technically could work. And with that, now we have lots of answers and lots of possibilities of explaining why, according to Tanakama Rabbi Meir, you can save only one, and Amar Gamliel, you can save two at a time. Baruch Adonai Olam. Amen.